to Sagas and wow, bleh, I can talk. Welcome to Sagas and Sass Season 3. I'm Tara, along with fellow hosts Jonathan and Nami. This episode will cover parts 1 and 2 of The Hod King, the third and that's wrong. Wow. This episode will cover parts 1 and 2 of The Fall of Babel. Let me not yell that. This episode will cover parts 1 and 2 of The Fall of Babel, the fourth and final installment in Josiah Bancroft's Books of Babel series.
If you're watching live, join us in the chat or after the fact, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Sagas and Sass to continue the conversation.
And just a reminder, the views expressed in this show are those of the hosts as individuals and do not necessarily represent the show as a whole.
All right, now let's hope I can talk better. Hey, are we all okay after everything that happened in the Hod King? Do we need a moment still to digest everything that's going on? Do we need a reminder of where everyone is in the, never mind, because right now the important thing is, remember Adam and the sparking people? Seriously, The Fall of Babel takes us into the Wayback Machine as the first, nearly 200 pages is all about Adam trying his best to A, survive, and B, figure out what the hell is going on at the very tippy top of the tower. And to be honest, it's a lot. Because he is brought to a place called Nebos that is this weird pseudo-paradise where machines do all of the work and there are gardens of fruits and vegetables just existing for the picking and everyone just gets to be artist and it sounds like a paradise, right? Only because he's an outsider, he's basically put on trial and apparently the only person who can help decide whether he lives or dies is Ida Alode, who created what is essentially an art installation based on his life. So, thanks to Ida, they decide that Adam can live, though he's basically tethered to Ida's daughter, Runa, who has been charged with keeping an eye on him. And soon he finds out that there is so much more going on here, as Adam and we as readers are waiting to figure out how the fuck this woman knows everything about him. We find out that the Hods have basically been trucking their way up through the tower to eventually give sacrifices to the Nebosans, the vast majority of which end up in a giant storage room. And then when Adam is required to do a Lumen Guard patrol, the Lumen Guard being the official name for the sparking people, he finds out that when the Hods, he finds out that this is what the Hods are finally doing when they reach the top of the Black Trail. So they're sending these goods they've earned. They've sent these goods. Wow, I can do this. They're sending these goods that they have carried to the Nebosans as offerings, which in itself is shitty enough. But then someone sends a baby over, and rather than let the Nebosans kill it, which is what they decide they're going to do, Adam offers to return it to the Hods at the top of the Black Trail himself. This is when he discovers that there are thousands of orphans living on the other side, as it were. Knowing how easy life is in Nebos and how much stuff and space they have, Adam promises that he will try to do something for the orphans and returns to Nebos with this purpose in mind. Soon enough, Adam, with the help of Runa and Ossian, the keeper of the warren, aka Nebos's many-room storage area, is secretly shuttling the orphans into Nebos and hiding them in said warren. Adam and Runa concoct a not-so-fake romance as part of their plot to disguise what they're really doing, but of course, nothing can last forever. Eventually, Elrin, who is Ida's son and therefore Runa's brother, discovers what they've been up to. He tells Ida, who all this time has been pissed off about Runa and Adam because she has a thing for Adam, and a confrontation ensues. Ida admits she wants to pluck out Adam's other eye and then take care of him for the rest of his life. Triple ew. But thankfully, Runa and Adam win the day. Ida dies. Elrin sacrifices himself in a very stupid attempt to rescue her. And Adam is able to show the captain of the Lumen Guard a recording of the bricklayer's murder that reveals the bricklayer's true plan for Nebos, that being a place that welcomes Hods into its embrace. Unfortunately, like the Nebosan who murdered the bricklayer, not all the people in this little paradise like that idea or the fact that they now have thousands of orphans to deal with. And so we leave Adam and Runa awaiting their fate.
Because it's time to catch up with Senlin in the belly of the beast being the Hod King, of course. But you know what? Despite this series kicking off with a book called Senlin Ascends, it turns out that we can sum up his first four Fall of Babel chapters with a simple bullet list. Senlin becomes a model stepper. Marat takes notice and moves Senlin up in the ranks. Turns out Marat actually does have the use of his legs. And also has 4 other wakemen working for him. Senlin realizes Marat is kind of obsessed with him. The Hod King is damaged when they begin their attempt to climb the tower, and it gets in a fight with the state-of-the-art. This leads to them having to burrow back inside the tower and dig their way up instead. Marat is not happy. Senlin tricks his way into being able to send a message to Fingol with a very basic and questionable sabotage plan. However, that plan almost works, only it turns out that there is a Hod prince nestled inside the Hod King, and after murdering a bunch of Hods who saw him stand on his own two legs, Marat has his Wakemen pilot the little Hod prince, which they call the Ardennes, away from the scene of the Hod King's destruction and up through the last bit of the tower. And thus, Senlin ends up back in the Sphinx's lair, still Marat's prisoner, and with seemingly little to no hope of changing his future, what is very possibly, nay, very likely going to be a short one, as far as he can tell. So now that we've got Senlin out of the way, we finally touch base with the intrepid crew of the state-of-the-art. We begin with, and wait for it, a tea party. Okay, there's tea, but it's not really a party. Byron wants it to be, but Irene is moping. Anne is trying to calm a crying baby Olivet. Maria is exhausted. Valletta is uttering to herself, and then when Byron insists that Valletta actually drink some tea, she gets very sick, and they have to rush to dose her with the Sphinx's medium. And we find out from not just this scene, but from Redelman's own seeming concern that while Valletta is still, in a way, alive, she's not by any means out of danger. All of this combined with the arrival of a messenger selling copies of the Acorn, a gossipy yet important publication that is apparently spreading word that the state-of-the-art is crewed by monsters and abominations who eat human infants. This combined with the earlier scene led to Edith finally sitting everyone down. Edith finally sitting everyone down and telling them everything she's been holding back, including the lightning sea that will level the tower if it's allowed to explode. Clearly, they have no choice but to continue on with their attempt to collect as many copies of the bricklayer's granddaughter as they can, and so they make their way to the gambling den that is Port Fortuity, where at first it appears that they will be successful in their endeavor, only to discover that the painting is being stolen as they are on their way to collect it. Valletta chases after the Hod who has taken the painting, but he gets away, and just as she's about to dive into a hole in the wall after him, because, by the way, she seems to somehow have even less of a sense of preservation now, the Hod King comes bursting forth and begins laying waste to the port.
Nami, you're muted. Wow, we are failing miserably tonight. Unmute thyself.
You know, I really, really thought I'd nail that one. I was so certain that I had that perfect, but apparently not.
Thank God I could edit this for the podcast. Wow. This is mostly my bad. I wrote this today and it's long. Anyway, so go on with the story.
Take two. Everything's fine. The state-of-the-art and all of the crew, thankfully, escape and launch the aforementioned attack on the Hod King, but are unfortunately rebuffed, though again, as previously mentioned, not without causing quite a bit of damage to the giant burrowing engine. But sadly, they don't know that. Unfortunately, it's soon after that they discovered that the ship's observatory is actually an awesome interactive map, and it shows that Senlin, because of that little bug that he swallowed, like back in book 2, What is Time, is in fact inside the Hod King. Wah! Worrisome as this is, though, they still have a job to do. And so it's on to the Cistern Ringdom to hopefully finally get a painting of their own. Which they do, but not without cost. They run into the Hod King again. Edith gets into a fight with two of Marat's Wakemen and barely makes it out alive. And Irene and Valletta fight off a third Wakeman, a weird human-mechanical spider hybrid named Delis, who ends up cutting off one of Valletta's hands. So even though they stumble back to the ship, painting quite literally in hand, they do so battered, bruised, and tailed by a bunch of injured refugees. After struggling to offload said injured refugees to several Ringdom's hospitals, and all the while noticing the Hod King's slow but constant crawl up the tower, they come up with a plan to lay a trap for Marat. As they're plotting, Valletta discovers that she can utilize their copy of the Bricklayer's Daughter to essentially visit the past. She actually gets to talk to the Bricklayer himself, and the Sphinx, who makes an odd comment that makes it sound as if there's more than one tower, and then proceeds to try to give her vitally important information. But then Valletta is yanked back to the present, and anyway, it's time for them to visit the ringdom of
Cilicia, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. I listened to this on audiobook. I should know this one. But then Valletta is yanked back to the present, and anyway, it's time for them to visit the ringdom of Cilicia and hopefully stop the Hot King's ascent with their trap. Now, Cilicia turns out to be a cesspool. Alliteration! And we mean that quite literally. Its people are fleeing, and the whole place is full of crud and clogworms. Yet another one of the towers, not intended to be dangerous, but evolved to be dangerous local fauna. So Edith, Valletta, Iren, and Redelman, let's call them Team A, have quite a lot to contend with as they wait the Hot King's arrival. Meanwhile, on the state of the art, Maria, Byron, and Anne, our unlikely but no less amazing Team B, have their own major problem. That being the sudden arrival of fucking William H. Pell, who shoots Byron with a crossbow, threatens Maria, obviously, and then gives chase to Anne. Like straight up in like a hunt. Gross. We won't bother you with the details because seriously, fuck that guy. And in the end, our trio of unlikely heroes wins the day thanks to some slight blundering and unexpected teamwork. They're all alive, and Pell is shot. Go Team B. As for Team A, they do in fact confront the Hot King, but as per the usual with this series, things don't quite go as planned. Redelman doesn't even get to set off his bomb because Senlin and Fingol set their sabotage plan in motion first. While the Hot King is destroyed, as we already revealed, Marat and his wakemen, with Senlin kidnapped, escape. And this, dear readers, is to the end of our summary. So, not the end of the book, of course, but boy, do we have a lot to discuss.
Oh yeah, sorry. I had no time to do any editing to that, so it was a bit of a mess.
It's okay. I edit as I read. Or sometimes I just stumble and can't say the name of a ringdom and just lag out for a solid 30 seconds and stare blankly into the distance. You never know what you're gonna get.
Okay, so part 1, the Daredevil's brother, and it also includes the first chapter. I'm calling it chapters of From the Belly of the Beast because even though they're kind of separated out, they're only labeled as like, I don't know, there's sections, I guess, whatever, it doesn't matter. So starting with this, honestly, or starting from the very beginning, honestly, I was surprised that I was as intrigued by what was going on with Adam as I felt. I thought I'd be so focused on catching up with everyone else that I wouldn't care about him. But Bancroft did a really great job pulling me back into Adam's part of the story. So I wanted to talk quite a bit about this because it does constitute the first like nearly 200 pages of the book.
Yeah. I was actually really interested to see that so many people online like didn't super vibe with this part.
Yeah.
I actually really liked it because my whole thing was that like Adam disappearing and then getting nothing of him in the whole last book was one of my big questions. And I truthfully had not expected to get so much payoff in terms of Adam's story. I thought Adam was like gone for good or we weren't going to hear from him until like the end. So the fact that we like opened this book with like answers to what the Sparkmen are and like what's going on at the top, like I thought that was going to be the end reveal. And the fact that we got it first, I was like super thrown. I was like, okay, wait, if this is the big reveal of what's at the top of the tower, what is the actual big reveal at the end of the series? And so that's sort of like.
Well, I think it's what's through what I'm assuming is going to be some sort of tunnel into time and or space.
Yeah, I mean, I don't
some sort of rainbow bridge, but I don't know where it goes.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, there's actually quite. When I was looking back through, I read this. I actually started reading this on the flight to Hawaii for my honeymoon earlier this month and finished it very soon. I didn't have much time to read while I was there, but I finished it very soon after I returned because I like plowed through this book. And I don't want to, touch on the end at all, but, I definitely was there's a lot more when I was writing the summary today. There's a lot more of Adam just kind of wandering around with the Lumen Guard than I had really remembered being. And then he finally gets into Nebos. I don't know how to, and you listen to the audiobook now.
Nebos.
It's Nebos. Okay. So he gets into Nebos, and there's the whole weird, like, they know all these crazy things about his life, but they're like, oh, you're not really what we expected at the same time. And then you find out that two of the Lumen Guard, that being Elrin and his sister Runa, are the children of the woman who has created this sort of recreation of Adam's life. And you spend most of the first, most of this part about Adam kind of wondering, like, what the heck, like, how the heck it was done, because it's not explained until quite a bit in. But holy shit, they used his eye to reconstruct his life story. Like, what is wrong with this woman?
I think one of the things that like really struck me with this part was like all of the commentary on like what a society like that is essentially in stagnation can devolve to if they like are like simultaneously not making progress of their own and also not letting others into their progress, and like that whole like thing there. But the other thing, or rather like the thing that comes from that like answered a question that I didn't even know that I had, was like, where did the eye taking machines come from? Because like, clearly like every bit of technology in this tower was from the Sphinx and from the bricklayer, but like every single thing that they're using, it's usually pretty obvious like what the intended like good and pure use of this technology was, except for the eye stealer. The eye stealer was the only thing that I could have looked at and been like, no, that's just an evil thing. Why do you have an evil thing? And like knowing now that it was like only meant to be used on dead people with their permission to like store their knowledge for future generations, I'm like, oh my God, like that's such an amazing thing to have. Like imagine that resource. And then I'm like, and we would do with it exactly what the Nebosians are doing. Like torture device immediately. Way to make like shitty films.
Or well, it's not so much the Nebosans that start it. It's the people in the parlor that like they feel like they have to meet a quota, and even when the Nebosans are like, please stop, the people in the parlor are like, but no, like they're not getting anything out of this, right? They're getting nothing out of this other than this assumption, fulfilling.
All I could imagine, like during that exchange, was like the Nebosians being like, "Stop sending us eyes," and the parlor being like, "Okay, I see what you're doing. Wink, here's some more."
Exactly. They're like, no, we can't. This is like our goal. This is what we're supposed to do. And it's like, how did they even? This is
well, it's like the more I read into this series, the more the series is just playing out as a really shitty game of telephone. Except like it was telephone with like a government over many years, and I'm like, oh, so it's what happens to all governments, because you start off with these honorable ideals, and then shit gets fucked. And then like every single thing that we're seeing in every layer of the tower is like they all had these like honorable ideals and this like amazing way of like cooperation and like society and enlightenment and like all of this that they were going to have in the tower. And as like I'm assuming it's been something around like 150 or 200 years now, and as all of that time has gone by, they've like lost, they did not understand the assignment anymore.
And there's nobody there. The Sphinx isn't coming back and saying, no, you're doing this wrong too, which is that's an entirely different issue.
And the other thing though that like I want to like that like I was thinking about a lot though is like it's really easy to, I sympathize with the Sphinx a lot in all of this, because like it's very understandable to look at how the tower, like what the tower has become and been like, these people can't be fixed. And it's also very easy to not see changes that are happening for the worse and not stop them in time until they are a snowball, and then they snowball. to a point where you can't fix them anymore. So that whole thing, like, I really get how she ended up like where she is, because I also very much stand by your book 1 theory now, or what was it, book 2 theory? What is time? Your early theory that the Sphinx is the bricklayer's granddaughter, because now I'm like, yep, there it is. She is. And it's like, oh man, like it sucks, like having like that sort of like legacy on yourself and that expectation on yourself when you're not a power hungry person and you only want good things, and then having to maintain the good when everything tends towards chaos because like universe laws of entropy. Wait, is this a physics class? I don't know what's happening anymore. But yeah, no, I don't think what she did was right, retreating from the world. I think she could have still tried, but like also she's 150 years old and I'm, tired at 27. So I guess I vibe.
But she also didn't have enough allies, right? I mean, somehow she's lost her allies. So she doesn't have the power to really make the change.
Yeah, it makes me wonder, like when things started to devolve for her, how things started to devolve for her. I kind of want like just like a whole like the Sphinx's life side story of just like shit getting fucked for her, even though that's pretty depressing. like I really just want to know, like, to me, this sounds so sad, but like the journey of somebody from like a bright-eyed, bushy-tailed like youth into somebody who's so disillusioned with the world that they will lock themselves up in a tower. Literally.
Well, clearly very intelligent too.
Exactly.
Very intelligent.
Yeah, and it's all of this that just makes me wonder, like, what happened to you? What happened to you?
Okay. Well, all that said, gosh, we're jumping ahead so much because
me again.
Who even knows? But so everything that's going on in Nebos, and also I want to get back to, I really liked Runa a lot.
Mm-hmm. I love Runa.
Like, I love that she's always been kind of jaded about things, and she had, I don't know if it's hard to say if she's recognized her privilege for a while or if she comes. I think she recognized it a little bit beforehand because she knew what, like, the Hods were bringing the stuff to the top of the tower and it was just getting thrown into a giant storage room, and she was like,
I think she was also one of the people. I think she also was saying that she like hates the videos and not just.
Oh yeah, the scintillations as they call them.
Yeah, but that's because she's a painter, right? I mean, that's different art medium.
No, I think it's because she understands, because her father, like, one of his eyes was used properly because he was studying bugs or whatever, right? And so they, like, she knows what they're supposed to be used for, and she sees this as like a gross like conflagration of what the real purpose is. And also, I think she didn't like her mother for a lot of other reasons to begin with. Good reasons too. But I really love that regardless of when she starts to recognize her privilege, she very clearly recognized at least some of it before Adam even meets her. And then when she really starts talking to him and sees, how things are, and the whole thing with the orphans and everything, she not only recognizes it so much more, but she does something about it, right? And and not in a, I don't know. I also love the fact that she lives in what is essentially a hovel with her dog, like, my girl. My girl. I understand your life.
The like 2-second earthquake when like Adam runs out of the house holding the dog, and she's like, okay, yeah, I can trust you now. I was like, vibes though. Like, man tried to save your dog. Like, y'all are BFFs now.
Yeah. I mean, seriously, I would fall in love with you immediately for that too. Like,
the way to a girl's heart is to save her dog.
Or cat, or literally any pet, I think. But
the way to a human's heart is to just save their dog, no matter, or pet. Safe pets get love. What?
Well, Save them legitimately, not performative charity and stuff like that. Just saying. But um, yeah. So I really really liked Runa. I also like, and part of the reason I like her, but also like I like Ossian as well. And then we find out later on that he was also an orphan that was sent over, and they couldn't quite decide what to do to him or do with him. So they keep him rather than murder him. So at some point, there was enough people there that were like, yeah, okay, we won't murder a child.
But not anymore.
But I like Ossian. He seems really cool. And
I just want to live his life. Just like
right?
junk drawer, but house. Oh God, am I a hoarder?
I've seen the comments your mother leaves on your statuses about needing items like little mini frog planters. So yes,
frog planter, and yes, I did buy it. It is very cute. I will be putting a pothos in it. It is so cute. I need it.
But I really liked. And I think I was disappointed in. I was really disappointed in Elrin though, because he seemed so congenial, right?
Well, I think it was like one of like for me, it was a very like realistic depiction of friendly and nice seeming people. Because this world is like I've found so many people who just seem like they're nice and seem like they're friendly and they're so easygoing, and you feel like, okay, this is a good moral person, but when it comes down to it, it turns out they're really not. And I've like and like the fact is that society values politeness and niceness so much that we've been conditioned to think a person's, bless you, John, and bless you again. Oh no, wait, is there a third one?
What?
Is there a third one?
Oh, okay. Sorry, I got excited for a third sneeze.
As you're talking about valuing niceness and politeness.
but yeah, so society has like values niceness and politeness so much that we have been conditioned to think that being polite or being nice and just being those things is enough to be a moral person, when it's really not. You can be polite and nice, and you can also have horrific beliefs and do horrific things, and just by being polite and nice, you can hide all of those things, and people are less likely to come at you for having those terrible beliefs because you've got that facade of like societal proprietariness you know what I mean, to hide behind. And I think that's like such a great example of what Elrond is, because, like you start the Adam section being like, okay, our ally is Elrond because he's nice. Our enemy is Runa because she hates your guts. And it turns out that all along that's super flipped, because Elrond may be really nice to you, but he's also kind of a bigot, and like he's also a bigot and like very ready to just like live in his like hidden utopia and never share any of their unlimited resources that they cannot use up all their own with other people, and he can see human suffering and just go whatever in the face of it. Whereas
Runa,
wow, I just completely lost her name. It had been like 30 seconds since I said it. But whereas Runa, even though I want to say, like, based off of her character, it's very likely that she came to notice and dislike these things about Nebos because of her dislike of her mother. And I suspect that's part of why she has all of this, like insight on why her society is negative, because she already hates where she is because she hates her mother. And, like, that's how it works sometimes. It takes hating something of like a place that you're in that's integral to it to start noticing all the other things that are bad with it. And I think that's part of why, like, her whole thing about disliking scintillations, I think it stems from, I dislike this because my mom does it. And then it became wait a second, I dislike this and I'm going to look at this more, and nope, I still dislike it. Oh shit, it's actually pretty horrific. And like, so like the fact that like, despite the fact that like Bruna has that like mean outside and that like a grumpy shell and everything, like she's the one who's really the good person. And it's like, I will say, so many times the person who's like meaner on the surface online has tended to be the nicer person when it actually comes to like, morality and not being a shitty person, because the number of polite racists, oh God. don't even. And then the ones who are like, well, I'm being polite, so you shouldn't be mean to me. And I'm like, I think you're misconstruing what meanness is in this case. Like, bye, bud. Sorry.
So,
I love Ruda. She's great. Elrin can eat my shoe.
Elrin is also a huge mama's boy, clearly.
He can eat my whole entire shoe.
He was pretty much a jackass.
I mean, Jonathan, because you haven't talked much at all about this, and I know this is the part of the book you actually read. So what were your thoughts on everything that's going on in Nebos? On, I don't know, anything, everything. You're welcome to change topics as well.
I was most taken aback by how backwards how they were devolving, essentially. And Nami mentioned it a little earlier. I mean, here they had everything, but it seems like, and unfortunately, I see some parallels to American society. They just didn't want to put in the work anymore. So as the engineers died out, it was easier to become an artist or a bad poet or a television producer or their equivalent of television producer or a director than it was to do something useful. And yes, there is use in our society for entertainment, and I certainly consume enough of it myself. But if everyone is doing nothing but producing entertainment, the society is in trouble. And I just thought that was sort of interesting to see how a society that in theory had everything just self-destructs like it did in 3 generations or 4 generations.
Yeah, I mean, it like, I called it a pseudo paradise in the review because there's so many things about this, right, that seem great. They have machines that take care of all of their basic needs, and they have, like I said, like fruits and vegetables growing everywhere just for the picking. And you can, let's say your yard has blueberries and somebody else's yard has, I don't know,
avocado,
whatever. Yeah. And funny thing, actually, out here, a lot of people have random fruit trees growing in their yard. So there's often, like, in our neighborhood group, like, hey, my lemon tree is full. If anybody wants lemons, please come take them. And stuff like that. Yeah, because like they ain't never gonna use an entire tree full of lemons for one house, right?
Are you sure? I mean, they can drink a lot of lemonade.
But so it's really like, there's some aspects of it that are like, oh my gosh, this is so great. But then, and also the idea that people kind of get to, like, all the basic stuff is taken care of, so they can all be artists if they want. The problem with that is, apparently everybody has chosen to be some sort of artist, and most of them suck. And there's the captain of the Lumengard. I know that he is only serving a term, and he's at the end of this part, he's kind of like, yeah, I've been wanting to retire or something like that, I think. But they know that he paints these little miniatures, right? But he's clearly been doing a job for a very long time. And I think that, I don't know if he felt that he had to, or if there was a part of him that wanted to, but I'll be honest, like, I write. I think of myself as a writer. I've published 2 books. I love writing, but I don't know if I could do that 24/7. Like, I don't know if I could not have any other pursuit, particularly, now that I'm doing what I'm doing for work, working in, the continuing medical education field. I'm not sure I could go back to just sitting at a computer and trying to write all day like I did, like I've done previously in a couple, like, short unemployed periods, because I know that there's something I'm good at that can actually make a difference. And I'm not saying that artists and writing and everything can't, but what I'm saying is, I mean, and this kind of goes back to what Nami was saying about a society that becomes stagnant. Not all of them are good at what they do. You know what I mean? Clearly, Ida alone is a fucking nutcase. So
Yeah, but she was apparently good at what she did. I mean, what she did might be horrific and evil, but
people liking it and her being talented are two very different things. Because here's the other thing. She also, all she's doing is cutting, like taking scenes from someone's life and cutting them into a false narrative.
But
yeah.
isn't that done regularly in the real world?
Oh, for sure. But doesn't mean it's good. I mean, just
visionary and still not have a good vision.
But I'm even talking about Hollywood. I mean, you when you watch these biopics or what I call pseudo history, they're cool, they're entertaining, but they don't really necessarily follow history per se, or they certainly take their liberties. I mean, to tell a story the filmmaker wants to tell. I mean,
I think the reason Ida was so good is because she was able to do things that other people weren't. Because it looks like the only reason she was able to chop up and tell the story in the way she did was because she had that bricklayer's eye.
Right.
And if it wasn't for that, she wouldn't have been able to do it. And she wasn't really a visionary. She secretly had a magic button. She was
George Lucas. She had technology that others did not.
She had editing software on her computer, and everybody else was just trying to edit it on their phone in the Photos app. That's what it was. She wasn't actually good. I think she just had something different because she had different technology. And I think the other thing is that it takes a very specific type of person to be a professional artist and to find satisfaction in that. And not all people are that. And I think the majority of people are the kind of person that easily is bored without being challenged. And the problem is that in order to be a good artist and a good self-employed creative person, you need to be giving yourself new challenges and new goals. And most people are not able to do that. Most people are not able to have the discipline to challenge themselves and to keep themselves interested in something like that. So most people in this sort of situation, even though it seems ideal of you get to be creative and do whatever you want, most people will just stagnate because they'll get bored and then they'll stop feeling motivated to challenge themselves, and then they'll just do nothing, aka what I've done every few times I've been unemployed. I've been real happy for 2 weeks, and then I've been all right, I'm real fucking bored. What now? And this is a whole society where, except for the top 2% of artists, every other person has been what now? Except they've been doing that for 150 years. And then also at the same time, they decided we hate other people.
Don't make me second guess the idea of retiring in the next couple of years.
Listen, John, as long as you find multiple things that you want to do with your time, that's all that matters,
Well, and I mean, and again, here's the thing, she's just because the people of Nebos like what she produced doesn't mean she's good at what she did. Because again, she's a hack. She took Adam's eye and spliced his story into her, what she felt the narrative was or should be, which is, there's some parts of it for sure that are true and correct, but I mean, as we saw from the moment her children meet Adam, they're you're not Adam. You don't act anything like, well, Elrin is well, you're Adam, but you're not really like him. And Runa's you're not Adam. You're nothing like him. So, and it's just very I mean, and then, oh my gosh, in the end, her whole goal is to pluck out his other eye so that she can finish his story in her quote unquote words, and then take care of him for the rest of his life. This whole thing just
Ida is the number one creep, and I dislike her so much. And I think it's kind of a further commentary on what society will like if they're given a bunch of shitty choices, which is that society exactly, right? It's we're always gonna like the shiny new thing, whether it's actually a good thing. We just like it because it's new. We like the new items because it's new. It doesn't matter if it's better. It's just like, oh, it's shiny. It's new. We want it. And like that's the thing with Ida, and that's like kind of like what I like in a way. That's like the perspective that I liked about her whole character, because like as Tara said, like it's clear she's not good at anything. Like she's not like talented. She is a hack. She's also a terrible human being. But that notwithstanding, even if she was the greatest, like the kindest, goodest person in the world, most morally upright, upstanding, and she did this and there was like no moral badness behind these scintillations, like she would still be a terrible artist because she's not actually doing anything. Like she's a hack. She's just using tools that other people don't have, that she didn't invent herself, that she stole. It would be another thing if she had created this tool on her own and then used that, because that is also a skill and that is a part of creativity. But she's a hack and she's a terrible person. And like the fact that like their society loves her stuff so much just shows that like people just want to be like entertained, and sometimes entertainment is shitty. Cough, The Room, cough. But like sometimes it's like shitty in like not a funny way and people still like things, and like it's just God, so much commentary on art and like the value of art and how people will like flock to bad art even if it's bad just because it's new, and people will like entertaining things just because they're entertaining even if they're like bad and like morally bad. Just lots of good stuff there. So much good stuff in Mebos. I do not want to live there. Sounds terrible.
It's just like it was just like growing up in the 70s and 80s where you had 3 channels and we were so desperate for genre. We would watch the worst things. I mean, I've gone back and watched some of the stuff that we loved, and it's like, oh my God. So you're absolutely right. Humans have a great capacity to enjoy shit.
Also, let's not even talk about the people who were literally wearing like mirrors or something so that they could like view themselves all the time. And this is a popular thing. It wasn't just one person.
I wish to point out though that specifically the one man who's doing this is also very explicitly a professional voyeur who
there's several of them. There's only one.
Yes.
Yeah. There's only one that they really like mention, or that's really mentioned.
For people's memories, and I'm just like,
you say professional voyeur, I just thought of him as a purveyor of pornography. But
see, yes, but then you get down to the way that he makes it, and it's just like at first I'm like, yeah, sure, man sells porn, good for you, bud. But then the fact that it is non-consensual porn on every single level.
Well, yeah, but the whole thing is all of these are non-consensual things on every single level. I mean that.
Oh yeah.
It's not just the erotic stuff. And so I was actually thinking about the morality of this. You know, it's not the Nebotians. Is it Nebotians? How would you? What would you?
Nebosians. I think it's Nebosians.
They're not the ones taking the eyes, but they're still using the eyes.
Well, but that's only been a recent thing too. But that's kind of, I mean, as we talked about already, that's kind of like it's a problem with the parlor and also a problem with the Nebosians. And then there's that like eyepiece thing that Adam ends up with. I can't remember what it's called, but it's
the bricklayer's eye.
Yeah, Ida was wearing it, and she like stole it from. No. It's like but it's not his eye. It's like a.
Yeah, that is what the tool is called. The tool is called the
bricklayer's eye. Okay. Didn't she get it out of the warehouse?
The library. Okay. So he ends up with that. So I guess we'll have to see if anything comes of that, because
something has to come with it. They spent too much time on it.
I mean, unless the thing that comes of it is just him plugging it into the mechanical librarian, and oh my gosh, and also just one quick thing, because we have other stuff to talk about, but one quick thing, that the mechanical librarian and how he like recites everybody's name and like status.
And whether they have an overdue library book.
Yes, I want to see, like, I want to see this made into a movie, like into a series of movies or a TV show or something. just for things like not, this isn't the first thing I've thought of in that respect, but like just for things like this, because it was one of those just things where every time, you know, it came up where he's just the mechanical librarians were citing these, and I was like, and you could just, and Adam's like, oh, everybody's rolling their eyes. He's taking forever to do this. I don't know. It was just,
I love him so much.
Bancroft has a very, he has a sense of humor that very much appeals to me. So.
Yeah. Well, one thing I do want to clarify though, Adam still has the bricklayer's eye and nobody knows about it. What he has plugged into the robot is the eye of the person who witnessed the bricklayer's murder.
Okay. Or well, I don't know if he even plugged it in. I think he just requested it because he has no, because he walked in and they were like, you have 0, you know, restrictions. And it's like,
whatever that is,
donated an eye.
So like, no, I was also a little confused about that because the whole time I thought it was like the bricklayer's actual physical eyeball. And then it turned out it was like a piece of technology that was also called an eye in a society that had a bunch of just, you know, spare eyeballs sitting around. And I'm like, this is confusing, but it's okay. We got there eventually. Gotta catch 'em all. Eyeball.
Oh God. Okay.
That's the Nebosians theme song.
So I don't really have much to say about what is going on with Senlin so far in this book.
Senlin's parts,
but he's such a fine stepper.
He's so good at stepping. Steps so good.
He stepped so good that he stepped his way right up into the important, you know.
Stepped his way to the top. Climbed that ladder, boy. I think it was, once again, like Senlin's part was like an unlikely series of Senlin actually somehow managing to do the thing he intended to do somehow. And I don't understand how he actually pulled it off, but I see how he pulled it off, and I'm still sitting here like scratching my head like, buddy, you really did that? Okay, dang. And like it's interesting because like all the insights we get about Marat and his Wakeman and all of that, it was all like really cool stuff. But like it's so funny because like in the like with the greater like moral commentary and the greater like insight about like with Adam's part and the like greater number of characters that we care about in the Arm of the Sphinx part, Senlin's part was like less compelling because of that to me. Like I liked it all. I was never bored while listening to it, and I actually enjoyed the parts that I listened to, but I don't really have a lot of commentary about it just because this is one of those parts where like it really was tell because Senlin is such a telly character. Like Adam's parts were interesting to me because Adam's a fucking idiot and he doesn't notice things right away. So I'm like looking at the society and like Adam's having his own crisis and I'm noticing other things and I'm like, ooh, that's cool. And like meanwhile, Senlin's already having like the moral response to everything that I would have to a thing that was happening in the book. And like he's like microanalyzing like Marat's sociopathy, which I would be doing in my head, but then doing it on the page for me, and I'm like, all right, cool, no comments, you're correct, bud, bye. Like, and like, so I wasn't bored at all. In a way, I was like very entertained because like every single time, like Marat does something absolutely unhinged and Senlin's like witnessing it. In a book, you'd normally, like with most characters, you just see them do the unhinged thing and the like protagonist would witness it and be like, huh, wow, that's unhinged. Let's move on. And Senlin's like, huh, wow, that's unhinged. Let's analyze every little bit of why that's unhinged first because I love the sound of my own voice in my brain. And I love Senlin for that.
So do we think Wow, I'm pretty sure Marat does not know about the impending doom of the tower. But if he did,
he definitely does not.
If he did you think he would be more helpful?
No,
probably not. He would probably. He seems a sort of egotistical, narcissistic sociopath that would think that by him taking control, he could automatically fix it. That's the vibes that I get from him. To him, he's untouchable. He's like the savior. He is supposed to be the king. He is supposed to be on top. Therefore, any problems of any sort would be solved by him being on top. Psycho.
I think that to me, the most interesting parts, and I'm with you, Nami, like I wasn't not interested in reading Senlin stuff in this book by any means. Also, I'm echoing. Why am I echoing?
But Senlin's the main character.
Well, he was. It feels very Ned Stark, only
Without killing him.
right. But he's sidelined quite a bit from, I mean, really from like halfway through the second book. So,
He hasn't been the main character
Or-
for a very long time.
or maybe the end of the second book. I think halfway. No, I'm thinking of the Hot King. Halfway through the third book, like there were other POVs starting in the second book for sure, and then halfway through the third book, it was like his stuff was just kind. As soon as he entered the Black Trail, his stuff was kind of an additive, right? So, you know, and again, I was way more interested in what was going on with him in this book than I was when he, from like the point he entered the Black Trail in book 3. But I think that the stuff I was most interested about in his chapters was the things, like Nami said, the things we learn about Marat through his eyes. And also, I mean, the things we learn about the people, the Wakemen who are part of Marat's team, because the Hods don't know about this. Senlin only knows because he was, you know, pulled up that ladder.
Marat's pet project.
Yeah, and he's got these 4 Wakemen who were, you know, clearly for whatever reason they're not involved with the ringdoms they were assigned to anymore, and they're all very, I mean, is it Delith or Delive?
Delith.
Delith was like, I'm still just what the fuck about her, because she's got the spider legs and she's got a human form, a top portion human form, but it's inside, like encased inside of glass. Like,
yeah, because her top human form, from my understanding, is a corpse.
Yeah.
So she needs the glass to like sort of like maintain the environment and prevent rotting, is what I was interpreting there.
I don't know for sure.
It's just fucking wild, honestly. I was very ready to just be like, all right, Spider Lady half in a glass, let's go. Like, all right, cool.
She's definitely got to be one of the earliest Wakemen. I mean, they talk about where she came from, right? She was from the
Silk Gardens, right? And so they actually
heard the spider eaters or something.
Yeah, she was to herd the spider eaters, and I believe they do explicitly mention that she was one of the earlier Wakemans, because like she was apparent, like they made it sound like she's been there for a very long time. And then and like it also seems like she was another one of like the animal creations of the Sphinx. Like,
I don't know. She has such human reaction. Like she blows on the glass and grows like writes like crude things.
I think the thing is, that was hilarious, by the way. I love that about her. I think she's lovely. Like 11 out of 10 would marry this dead half spider lady. Let's go. So the reason I believe that she is, you know, because we demonstrate, like the Sphinx has clearly demonstrated that she can create like partial like automatons and cyborgs out of robotic and animal components and give them human levels of intelligence, aka Byron. She also demonstrated that like these creatures, even if they end up not being smart like Ferdinand, they can still communicate in a way that is like understandable to other humans. So I think this also makes the most sense with Marat's narrative about how he found Delith, because the way that he always describes her as subhuman. And again, it's possible that this is because, like, you know, Marat's a shitbag, and he just never viewed her as human because he's a shitbag. But what I suspect more than anything is, especially because the human part of her is a corpse, is that I think she is more spider than person, because otherwise it's a little cruel. And this is also a possibility of, like, you know, the Sphinx's oversight and like the bricklayer's oversight, because otherwise, like, making a person live in solidarity to herd spiders in the Silk Gardens is a bit cruel, you know? And like giving a person grotesque spider legs, even though it would be effective for a job, and then expecting them to be able to live in society is a bit cruel. And every single one of the other Wakemans that we've seen, even though they have been like clearly augmented cyber kinetic steam beings, they have also been, made in a human shape. So it seems a very weird choice that she would have been deliberately remade in a not human shape unless that was her original shape. Is what I was thinking. But also this is very much me being like, God, I hope they didn't just make this lady into a spider and tell her to herd spiders for the rest of her life. I hope.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely something that I bandied back and forth. Like, I don't know. Hopefully, we'll get to know a little bit more about what she is. And I agree. Like, I liked a lot of the Wakemen that are with Marat, and it's sad because
I love Gage.
It's very much a
Gedge.
Gedge. Yeah,
He's hilarious and like.
And Kale, Sale, how do you say it? Is it Kale?
The one that's like a drunkard and mostly a robot, I don't like, but the one with the gorilla arms, I love him.
Yeah, that's the one with the arms is Kale or Sale.
Kale.
The robot one, he's
Thorin,
something
like that. I don't like him. He sucks. The rest of them are pretty cool though. I especially love my spider wife, and I love Mr. Gedge because he is just he's very much an academic, knee deep into his academics, and he's like, shut the fuck up, I'm the smartest person in the room, get off my back.
And he thinks he's smarter than Marat too, and
frankly, I'm pretty sure he is technology wise, like, and also Marat's a bit of a psychopath, so like I'm not really giving him credit as far as his smartness, because like, with the added psychopathy, I'm like a little like disinclined to give him credit. And Gage seems like sane and really, really smart, and also just the sort of person that you can manipulate at the
time. And I think that's the thing. It's like I enjoyed these characters, and I just wish they weren't. And I kept like I keep reading, like I kept reading and hoping like maybe one of them would, I don't know, maybe Senlin would pal up with one of them or something. I don't know. But so Jonathan, what about you? Did you get far enough to learn enough about these Wakemen that you have feelings about any of them? I don't know. Did you dislike any of them?
The Wakemen?
Yeah.
I didn't really think about them much as major characters. Yes, the spider was funny, but other than that, they weren't in it enough up to where I read that I cared.
In fairness, though, I feel like a lot of Gedge's good parts come a bit later. So, like, I feel like once he starts going fully into his, I'm just a technology dude, but I know everything more than you do, so shut up moments that you're going to be like, yes, this dude is amusing.
Yeah, I mean, yes. I consider him the engineer, not the technology dude, but that's okay.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both, honestly. Okay, so moving on from what's going on with Senlin. Well, I don't know, any last bits about that, because I guess we didn't really talk about the fact that he somehow like worms his way into being able to black out books so that he can send a message to Finn Goal, and it's like this,
it's such a quintessential Senlin plan at this point that I don't even like blink. I'm like, of course this is what he comes up with. Like, sure, buddy, sure, Tom, like you do you, bud.
Yeah. And then in the end of toward the end of like his portion of this, the first two parts of this book, Finn sends the books, the selection, like Marat sends down to the boiler room because he's like, I don't want you blacking out the books I actually care about, because BT dubs, Marat is like, kill all the books, but then he actually is like reading all the books too. So he sends down to the boiler room and he's like, send us up some books. And Finn sends, 5 books who the first letter of each title spells out Maria. And it's just like, don't make me like you again. Like, don't make me like you, Finn. Cause like, you like, I know you got a family, a wife and kids, and you had things about you because of that were like, I guess commendable, but like really you were a bad dude. Like, so,
yeah,
but
I think the funniest thing to me was like just like how quintessential, how like I felt like I was watching an episode, like listening to an episode of Cults, because Marat revealing like all of his things was like, yep, and that's what a cult leader does. Yep, and that's what a cult leader does. Yep, and that's what a cult leader does.
Yep, and that's what a cult leader does. Okay, so still a bunch to talk about, because there's also in between all of these 4 Senlin chapters, there's everything about what's going on State of the Art. And there's a lot going on State of the Art. Like, this is a random aside. So, like, the acorn, and I'm forcing myself to say that what I think is properly, because for some reason I was raised to say eggcorn.
It's acorn.
I know it is, but listen,
I'm
for
sorry.
whatever reason, where I'm from, my family, something, it was eggcorn. Like, and yes, I know it's not right, but it is one of those things that's ingrained in my head that my ex used to make fun of me for. He's like, stop calling it an eggcorn. He also hated how I said hot dog, because
What?
it sounds like hut, not hot.
Well, if
But
I
I'm telling you, this is how I was raised. I don't really have an accent, but there's something about like
how have
North
I
Central.
How have I never heard you say hot dog until this moment? And how is it so weird?
I don't know. But acorn. So the acorn. I know it's kind of a random aside, but I was a little bit kind of thrown off by the fact that we had never heard about this publication before. It felt kind of like a weird, I don't know. So it was a weird and unnecessary plot device. And I really, really, really love these books. And I love Bancroft's writing. And I think he's amazing at a lot of things. But this was one of those things where the 2 times that the acorn, I have to really fucking force myself to say it that way.
Just call it the nut.
Yeah.
Call it the nut.
The 2 times that it really came into the plot in the first, 2 parts of this book was with the kid that has been dared to bring them a copy, and Edith reads it and it says, they're all monsters and abominations who eat human infants. And it's kind of it is right after that she's like, we're going to have tea. And she tells the rest of the quote unquote crew of the State of the Art everything about the lightning sea and the explosion that might happen, etc. But I think that what happened with Velita, that alone absolutely could have led to Edith telling them these things. And then later, the editor, who is a woman, even though she's still editing it under the name of, I guess, her father, nobody's going to trust a woman or whatever. And that's something entirely different, whatever. But, she pops in and she's like, yeah, so you should be worried about Duke Pell. And to be honest, I don't think that should have happened. I think that the Duke showing up later would have been a little bit more surprising had it not been spelled out to us that he was on his warpath. Like, and it still wouldn't be super surprising because, and this is something Jonathan and I talked about. I can't remember if it was the last episode or the one before that when we were covering the Hod King, where Jonathan was like, oh, he's definitely coming back. And I was like, yeah, you're probably right, but I don't want to think about it. And, so I don't think it was necessary to have that spelled out for us.
I think, to me, it more served to plug the plot hole of how he shows up. And it also, like, the main purpose I saw in it was, like, her commentary on how people are always going to, like, believe what they want to believe, and that things like media are not really going to change it. It's either going to, like, give you confirmation bias, or it's either going to make you scoff at the other. And I thought that was, like, a really, like, interesting point that was like, you know, very accurate, and like it's definitely like clear that like that's a thing that happens in media, and like, you know, with like reporting and with like what people like, once somebody thinks something is the truth, like telling them otherwise is not gonna convince them. They're just gonna scoff and be like, oh, you're a liar, or you're just going to confirm their like beliefs anyway. So I thought that was like a really interesting like thing that was added there. I also did super feel that it was super random because I don't remember that like publication being addressed at any other point in the book, in the series. And I feel like if that had been, if like it had been like, if the publication itself had like showed up before, like maybe in their pirating days as well, it would have like felt less like out of the blue to me. But like, I think having the acorn show up multiple times made sense, because even though she's like, yeah, Duke Pell is on this warpath, like obviously when it shows up the third time and there's no signal and they're like, oh, and he looks slightly bigger than a normal boy, I'm like, all right,
I guess.
like that was the moment I knew it was him. But like I also feel like if they didn't have like the second part with the editor and being like, the Duke's on a warpath officially, like you should know, like I feel like I would have been like, like I knew he was coming, but this feels a bit cheap. Like how did he find this? Like how did he get like how did he do this? How did he come up? So like I mostly saw it as like a way for the Duke to access them, and then like a way to also include some commentary on journalism and media and confirmation bias in general. So
okay.
Yeah.
I guess. Yeah. And you're right. You're right. You know, because my first thought was, okay, well, he didn't show up with a bunch of warships or whatever. He like the editor was like, he's building a fleet. And I don't know if that was just incorrect information or what, or he decided, who knows. But I do think that if this was going to be a thing, like the acorn was going to be a thing, I said it, I forced myself to say it. I think that it should have showed up prior to this, just even if it was just once, briefly.
Oh yeah,
right?
yeah. I also agree. I did very much think it was out of the blue,
like an afterthought.
Yeah, it just seemed like it was. It very much seemed as though it was a, oh shit, I need a way to make this work. It seemed like the one time I could truly see how Bancroft needed to insert a plot device into his story, whereas most of the time his writing has been the sort that I cannot see his plot device until it has been executed, and then I can go back and see it. This was the only one that I was like, there's something else going on here that this is being used for, because this is too weird and too random to be like just a thing.
If this is ever made into like a movie series or a show, preferably a show, I would hope that they have the acorn. Did it again. I can say it right. I have to think about it and force myself to do it, but I can do it. I would hope that they would insert the acorn before, you know, this point in the series.
Yeah.
It's too late in introduction to that plot line. Device.
Yes, I think so. And I think like what Nami said is right. I think that he realized he'd maybe written himself into a little bit of a corner, and he needed to figure out, he wanted the Duke to come back, and he needed to figure out a way to get him in there. You know, I don't know. I would love to talk with the author and ask him some of these things. I don't know. Maybe I'll email him. I do have his email. Okay, so that said, I guess let's just get the Duke Pell thing out of the way, even though it kind of happened toward the end of all of the state of the art stuff, because it's whatever. Let's get it out of the way. Ew. Like I was like, hello, goodbye, good riddance. But that moment, and I'm sorry, I think Jonathan, this might be because I know you didn't get to quite read as far as
this, unfortunately.
Yeah. That moment there, not moment, but there was like a bunch of pages, I don't remember, a couple dozen, whatever, where I thought Byron was dead.
Same, yeah. I really thought he was gone, and I was so upset. And then it was only when Maria was trying to pull the crossbow out of him that I was like, maybe there's something going on. Maybe he's still around. No, that can't be. That would be too good to be true. And then she runs off. Shit goes down. And it's like, Byron's back, bitches. And I'm like, yeah. That's it. That's my summary of that section. Byron's back, bitches.
Yeah.
Can we get a patch that's shaped like a little sticker, or a patch that's shaped like a deer and it says Byron's back, bitches,
but with only one antler.
but with only one antler? Alternatively, a teacup that says that.
Ooh, yes, a teacup. That would be amazing. That's a great like merchandising thing. Like, dear Josiah Bancroft, we would like to see a teacup that says Byron's back, bitches. Just as a deer head with one antler. Seriously, I just, I love Byron so much. He's just
very good bean. He has so much anxiety and he manages it through manners and cookware, and I vibe with that.
Seriously.
What a good bean.
Seriously. He is all of us at the beginning of COVID when we were teaching ourselves how to bake sourdough bread, and just, I've always been, I worked in the restaurant industry and I was like a prep chef for many years. So like I've always been somebody who really enjoys cooking and learning new things about cooking and trying new things with cooking. So to me, and also I've definitely used that to, God, I went through a bread phase when I was like at my worst in terms of like depression and anxiety. I went through a bread phase where I could not tell you how many different kinds of bread. And this was like 2014, 2015, way before COVID. Man, kneading that dough, punching that dough, that was some just extra level of therapy.
Gotta say, don't knock it till you try it.
But yeah, I really loved Byron, and I was like, I feel like characters have to die, right? But not Byron. He's just such a bean.
It's so funny because like this is one of those series where if the majority, or even if many of the main characters died by the end, I would feel like, okay, yeah, that makes sense for the world building that we've had. But this is also a series that, since none of them have actually died so far, I would be absolutely devastated if anybody did it. Like even more than other books, because if you really think about it, we're at book 4, we're halfway through book 4, not a single main character has died.
Yeah.
And a lot of people
that worries me
have died, and I have a lot of anxiety about it.
What were you gonna say, Jonathan? Well,
we lost the dog.
Oh yeah.
Ferdinand.
That was very sad for me.
I don't know if he's a main character, but it was a character.
I'm sad again. I'd forgotten about Ferdinand. Time to cry.
Yeah, seriously. I did not forget about Ferdinand. I just pushed it out of my brain.
Yeah, I was going to say, I feel like I have blocked Ferdinand's death from my memory so as to avoid being sad about it, because the good train puppy is dead and I do not know how to deal.
So I do think the end of this book is going to be Senlin is the Sphinx, but
really? Because I don't know that I think that. I think it's going to be Valletta or Edith.
Yeah, I agree. And I think Byron, so you haven't gotten to this point. I'm pretty sure. No, I know actually, because when I was writing the summary earlier, Byron tells Edith that the Sphinx was training her up to be his.
Oh yeah. That definitely happened.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to be either Edith or Valletta, and yeah, I don't think it's going to be Senlin. Senlin doesn't have the capability.
I'm still betting on Senlin.
I think. See, here's what I think.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think he has the capability.
See, I think what's going to happen is that Edith or Valletta will become the new Sphinx. Perhaps Edith with Valletta as her little supernatural assistant. But I think what Senlin's going to do is whatever's on the Bridge of Babel, whatever like this like purpose beyond the tower is, I think that's going to become his mission. I think whatever that is going to be assigned to him, and I don't know what that is, because they said that the project isn't done and that it has to keep and they said that like the bridge isn't complete, the bridge needs to be finished, and like all of that stuff from like a few books ago. So I think it's going to be Senlin's job to finish it, And I think Edith will continue to be the Sphinx and like maintain the tower that is, and then Senlin will be the one that's like building
the new tower. That could be.
That's what I think, because I don't think Senlin could just maintain and build. He's
well, going back to, because now we're getting into like theories or whatever. Not that I don't want to talk about that, but going back to what actually happened. Redelman has also, I've talked so much about how much I have just so much enjoyed and continued to grow to enjoy Byron, right? Like, it's like I never didn't like him, but the more I read, the more I'm just like, oh, Byron.
Yes.
But Redelman is one of those characters.
Taken the truly hate to absolutely adore journey.
Yeah, and Redelman is one of those characters who Jonathan and I talked quite a bit about him, I believe, in the last episode. Again, I where he's got a good arc as far as I can tell, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because at this point we find out so much more about him. We learn, quite a bit in the Hod King, or the sort of toward the end of the Hod King about him, but now he's involved in helping Valida because he knows what it's like to have the Sphinx's medium literally running through your veins. And we find out from when they take in the injured refugees that he used to be a doctor, and he's, still remembers things from that life. And he's also just, I know none of them really.
He has the curiosity of a toddler.
Yeah.
The fascination with the world that a child does, while also being an adult and understanding like grown-up things and being able to do like grown-up things. So it's like a very interesting like contrast, because he has like the naivete of a child in the sense of like that wonder, but he doesn't have the naivete in the sense that like he is naive about the cruelties of the world. Like, he's very much knows both, and that's a weird combination to have in most characters. Because, like, usually when people learn about the world and its cruelties, cough Senlin, cough, they lose that childlike wonder and that glee and that, like, desire to, like, learn, like that, like, glee, I think is the word I'm looking for. They lose that, and Redelman has both, which is just such a weird combo, because like one step he's like lobotomizing people, and the next step he's like, I found a bird, and the next step he's like, I'm a pilot now, and the next step he's like, snails are cool, and the next step he's like, here you go, I'm your doctor, and the next step he's like, actually I've been seeing the future this whole time, and the past, mostly the past. Nami doesn't know why she said the future. That was wrong. But yeah, that's my Redelman impression. He's all over the place, and I love him.
Yeah, and again, I
don't know if he deserves love, Nami.
I think I love him now because it's very clear that like after he got his like treatment and all of that he is nowhere near the same person before. I love him because I see in him every murder hobo D&D character that's chaotic that I've ever made. And I think what he is.
I think what I really like about his character arc or whatever is that, or maybe not character arc, but I'm trying to find a way to explain this without saying anything I should, like I saying anything wrong, right? But it was very clear that he became what he was because of the people he was hanging around. And the thing is, he wasn't even doing that by choice, right? He was assigned to the baths. He was stuck with the commissioner. He was brain, like he was his head, everything was warped. I mean, and he was already, there's already that whole extra thing of the medium is flowing through his veins and it's causing other issues. And then he gets placed somewhere where he is under the, maybe not control, but leadership of guidance. Yeah. Of somebody who is clearly super problematic. And so I think it's a very roundabout testimony to the fact that somebody can be, in a sense, raised by a person or people who are dangerous and problematic and come out the other side bad, but how there is always a way for them to be reset. And I don't mean that obviously his reset was very physical and, in your face, and like he was basically dead again and reincarnated. But I still think that it speaks to that idea that you can have these things put in your mind and they can warp the way you think and how you act. But then if you just end up that you can be reset with with the right influences or whatever, right?
I think it's also very much a commentary on the fact that like certain types of people can be, but also like not every type of person is this type of person. And I think that's also like a very, like, I think both of those are like really good points, because like, yeah, a lot of like some people can be saved, but a lot of people, but like it does take a specific type of person to be saved, and it takes a specific type of environment to be saved. Because like I think what is unique about Redelman is the fact that like he is very much like naive and curious, and I think that's the parts of him that was able to be easily led astray, and that's the parts of him that's like easily able to be guided. But I think that if he was actually like, if he had any sort of like vindictiveness in his body or like desire to cause pain, like it wouldn't matter that he was naive and curious. Like that would prevent him from being reshaped in this way.
Yes.
Yeah, except that some of the ways he injured the people when he was fighting, I thought were pretty vindictive.
I don't think that was vindictive. I think that was just, I think what I also think at that point, he was still new to this new, like, body almost, or this new mind and this new situation.
I think it's very difficult to say if he was without being in his head, because this universe that Bancroft has created is a universe where even the good guys are forced to be vindictive and cruel in how they attack and like
Edith, yeah, right? Like she's
so like, because we know like what the Sphinx and Edith does and like what they sort of expect in a way of like protecting their own, it's reasonable to assume that Redelman would have just done whatever he could, which he thought was the most effective to keep them safe, which to him ended up being that. But also in a way that sort of goes back to that naivete, because he doesn't understand in a way what is cruel. So that's sort of what I sort of saw with that, because it was absolutely horrific and over the top and like lobotomizing people. Like, Jesus fuck, Redelman, sit the fuck down, buddy, calm down, please. But like at the same time, like it's very clear to see that like all of these things he's doing, it's like if you told a toddler that like these ants are gonna kill your ladybug pet, kill the ants, and the toddler was like, roar, smash ants, except in this case the ladybug friend is the state of the art, and it's like people and the ants are humans technically.
Well, and what you're saying really ties into how Edith feels when she is choking the life out of, oh gosh, I can't remember if it's Kale or the other one, the one whose name none of us can remember, the Wakeman who's got the whole metal body, the drunkard guy. It starts with a TH, I think. I don't think, whatever, it doesn't matter. But she's like, I know that this guy needs to go, right? But at the same time, I don't want to be this person who does this thing. So while I don't think Redelman thought like that by any means, because that scenario in the Hod King where he's just stabbing them in the brain, he's like, ha, 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 ha. But again, like you said, there's a difference between his mind, which is, like you said, like kind of almost like a toddler, especially at that point. And I think he is learning or remembering more about what and who he was as time goes on, and he was still pretty new at that point. So
I'm not sure if he ever would fully become like not like that, because the way I'm seeing Redelman right now is as like a completely chaotic neutral character. He's very
maybe
much
chaotic evil. I don't
neutral.
know.
No,
Neutral,
definitely not evil.
Not evil, because see, here's the difference. If he was chaotic evil, it wouldn't matter that he was with good people. He would still be evil. It is because he is neutral, and I think the thing with him is that he doesn't, I feel like to him, like it's very reasonable to say that he either doesn't understand or has no way to comprehend morality, and therefore he goes with the morals of the people who are around him, which is why he's good now. A part of me also believes that if he ended up with Marat again, by some crazy happenstance, that he could easily become evil again. I think Redelman is so like true middle of the line neutral without comprehension of either side that he sort of is just doing whatever is around him. And I think that's the reason he was able to change right now, because he is only chaos, no morality.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right there.
What happened if take chaos, put juice in veins?
Well, like then you get Velita is also Velita is chaotic good at I think Velita's always been chaotic good, but now she's like extra chaotic good because she has no like she apparently has no self-preservation. It scares her.
I would like to requalify her as chaotic idiot.
Oh gosh, and there's so much good stuff between like, you know, Iron is all just, what did you do to my friend? And
I feel like
there's so much with Velita here.
Want to delay the Velita conversation to next week or next session as well.
Yeah.
Just because there's a lot of really good Velita content in the second part that John hasn't gotten to yet that I don't want to discuss in detail, because I think it makes the Velita journey like even more interesting. And I think there is so much happening with Velita that I really want to know John's thoughts, and I don't want to jump into it right now, because also I would like to mostly talk about the fact that Eren and Anne are just like happy old girlfriends and they're having a good time. And frankly, that's an easier conversation to have now than all of Velita's stuff, which is
and I can say that having finished the book, there's quite a bit about Velita's journey that would be better to talk about at the end.
Okay, yeah, that's actually perfect then, because like I feel like everything that's happening with Velita right now is really building up to something bigger, and I think we've just gotten like onto the cusp of like starting to figure out what it is, and I'm really excited to figure out more, but also like I want John to be here to like vibe with us about this, you know?
Yeah, like, and on top of that,
I will catch up.
We're getting
now,
to,
I'm sure.
I hope so.
Yeah,
we're getting to the hour and a half mark, and like you said, Iron and Anne. So we have waxed poetic about Anne in the past 2 episodes, right?
I'm so glad.
And you had to meet, you had to miss them, and like, were you there for our first talk?
No,
I don't think so.
Fall of King.
Yeah, so we love Anne. Anne is
the real reason I wasn't here for Hod King is because I'm not about millipedes, and the fact that the Hod King is a millipede meant that I couldn't join the discussion emotionally. JK, work ate me, but you know, technicalities. Please continue. Anne is
But
lovely.
yeah, we have waxed poetic about Anne so much, because is there anything not to like about Anne? Have we like
not yet?
Right? Not yet. And I can tell you, you know, at least through the end of the portion of this book that we're covering, no. And I'm sure Nami agrees with me.
She has one moment where she succumbs to fear, but frankly, like, yeah, no. If she didn't succumb to fear at that point, I would have been freaked out. I would have been like, this does not follow for your character, young lady. You should be very alarmed.
Yeah. And that's when the Duke is is attacking them.
I just want
And
her and Iron to happily hide in a closet and make out. Like, that's just what I want for them. Like,
they do that at least
exactly.
twice.
They do that at least twice, I think. I also want them to adopt me. Like, but like as grandmothers specifically, because while they're definitely like mother age for me, I get big grandma energy from Anne, while also like picturing her as like not actually a grandma because she's still like clearly like spry working age, and Iron's like maybe only 50. You know?
Yeah, I would guess that Iron is or, I would say 50 to 60. I think she might be closer to 60.
Yeah, I'm taking Iron at 55 because my mother is 53 and she is perimenopausal, not menopausal.
Yeah,
I'm
my mom
I
went
did
through
not mean to tell the
menopause.
internet that.
My mom was forced to go through menopause early, so
Oh,
yeah, well, she had to have like a full hysterectomy when she was in her
hooray!
late 40s. So
If this was voluntary and for a good reason, hooray!
sadly, it was not.
Oh no!
But that said, yeah, I picture Anne as being like 45, I think, and Iron being, let's say 55. Let's say 55. And
I
yeah,
like that. That's very cute for them.
and poor Iron has had no love in her life. And then this.
She just has a rebellious daughter.
And then this. And like her, like she gets Anne, and Anne is so good. And like, listen, like Iron, despite everything about her past where she was kind of forced to do all these things that she clearly didn't like all of the time, if ever. Iron is a good person too, but Anne has just been living her life trying so hard for all of these shitty families that she's had to be the nanny for. Like, and oh, I love the two of them, and I just want them to have like warm, cozy, like I want to picture them like in a cabin in the mountains with snow, and they're just cuddling by the fire, right? Just happy and content.
I just want like a little like scene where like Anne like kind of like puts a blanket over Iron and she like gives her a hug, and then Iron gives her a hug. Isn't it cute? I love them. If anything happens to them, I will kill myself and everybody in this room.
We will riot if anything happens to Iron or
my
Anne.
9 reference, and also only there is nobody else in my physical room, so the virtual room will have to suffice.
What were you gonna say, Jonathan?
Well, I'm saying, I'm just thinking, at least a couple of these characters I think are doomed, but I just have no idea which ones.
Listen, if they bury the old lesbians, I will be very upset. I will write a strongly worded letter to Bancroft and be like, "You killed my lesbian grandmothers. How dare you?"
Well, and also, you know, I just don't want
Are they
it
old
to
enough to be
happen.
grandmothers? I guess they are. I mean,
No, they're not.
think
Not to me. They wouldn't be my grandmothers, but if I am at an age where I could have a toddler, so yes, they are old enough to be grandmothers because they could be my mother. Oh my god, I could have a toddler. Retreat into the neck of my shirt because that should not.
Nami, how old are you?
I'm 27.
Okay, so I thought you were younger than Talia. You're a year older. Okay.
No, I'm older than Talia. I was 3 years old when my mom was 27, or maybe I was 2 years old, something like that. Not great. Terrible. Terrible. Who would give me a toddler? That would be a terrible decision. Should not be allowed
to give you. Talia works quite well. I shouldn't say it usually does not work quite that way.
It is exactly that word choice that further shows how much I shouldn't have a toddler.
Well, I mean, it was theoretically possible Anna and I could have been given toddlers, but by some friends of ours, if anything bad had happened to them.
Oh, godparents.
Where we had, well, not just godparents, we had agreed to take the kids if anything happened to them, which thank goodness didn't. And one kid is now 20 and the other is about to go to college. So that is now out the window.
Well, Okay, so on that note, um, not to change the subject, we're running kind of long here. So, oh, hello, cat. She has
Oh,
decided
hello.
to perch
What is she
upon
wearing?
the
If
cat.
it sits.
Oh, it's
She's
just her coloring. I thought she had like a saddle on her or something.
Oh no, that's just marinade. So we get to well, I mean we saw so many so many other ringdoms in the first couple parts of this book. The gambling den was really crazy. How they've just kept building out the port, and it's so dangerous, and then it gets destroyed. And also they're all nudists. They're all
Well,
nudists.
I was going to say how to turn this into an R-rated film.
Yeah, they're all nudists, but they live like in glass houses, literally. Like,
An actual horror story scenario.
and then there's the cistern, which we meet Tane. Tane, I'm pretty sure is his name, who is like actually a good guy, like good leader, like just trying to protect his people, and like everything about the cistern. It's like it's one of the is it the first ringdom we've come across where they're actually like trying to just live life and be good?
I think this is the first ringdom that has evolved beyond the we just suck.
Yeah.
They have evolved to they
They learned their lessons.
and then they learned their lesson and then they're
Mhm.
like, we're just trying to do better now. And everybody else is still at the somewhere between we just suck and some are starting to learn their lesson, but mostly they just suck.
And then we get to Cilicia, which is like the vineyard, basically. And oh my God, like, I don't even, there's so much to unpack there. Because like the queen literally destroys her own ringdom by digging into the wall and like letting the sewage flood the city. And then she's like, bye forever, like sails off on her ships. And oh
Like
gosh,
it's but like also isn't that what all our rulers are doing to our
yeah. It's just a lot of we get so many new ringdoms so quickly, and we learn a good bit about them, but
here's the thing, we get so many new ringdoms so quickly that I had straight up forgot about the nudists in the glass houses. Like that's how many we got. Like
yeah.
straight up nudists in glass houses did not even make a lasting impression because we got so many.
It's Vegas, but
oh no.
but if you go to Vegas and everything is glass, that's so much for what happens in Vegas, right?
What happens in Vegas is known by absolutely everybody in Vegas because secrets are evil. Oh my God.
and okay, so at the end, we're left with, Marat has Senlin still and his wakemen, and they are in the Sphinx's lair. They burrow up into the Sphinx's lair, and the state of the art is still the state of the art with its same old crew because fuck you, Duke Pell, you're dead now. And we don't really know what's going on with Adam since the end of like the very first part.
He's in God jail.
Last we know, he's standing on a stool with a noose around his neck with Runa next to him. And I guess on that note, like last thoughts about what you think is coming, or I don't want to theorize too much, I think, but more so just I don't know about the first two parts, because the first two parts of this book, unlike the previous books where it was kind of a little bit more than half, and then the last
is exactly 72% according to my Kindle.
Yes. Yeah. So it was a lot, and there's going to be so much for us to talk about once the book is done, because I think there's a bunch of this that, including the Velita thing, like everything that's going on with Velita, that we need to come back to. But it was a lot. There's a lot packed into the first two parts of this book. Part of me is almost like maybe the maybe some of the earlier books weren't long enough, or maybe there should have been like it should have been a 5-book series. I don't know, because if this had ended where it ended with part 2 / the 4th chapter of The Belly of the Beast, I think I would have been okay with that. It would have been a crazy cliffhanger and everything, but I don't know. There's a lot.
The more I'm like looking at how much we have left in this book, the more I'm starting to realize that we're definitely not getting all the answers. We are not getting all the answers. The book is going to end on some sort of big reveal, and I'm suspecting, some like, cursory falling action for just, for like the sake of like decorating the cake a little bit. But I suspect we're going to end up with like answers to a lot of things we've been wondering, but more questions. And
waiting another decade for the next book.
Yeah. I know this is the last book in the series technically, but I suspect I'm going to end this series and be like, I want more.
Which is, I don't know, to me that's a good thing, I think. Like,
I think it depends. I think I can like it or dislike it depending on how it's done by the author. I am usually the type of person that wants, bless you. Hey, that was 3 seasons total. You did it.
Yeah, there might be a 4th. Who knows?
Oh man, I'll be waiting. I'm usually the type of person that I want everything. Like, I do want the author's answers to everything because I want to know what the author was thinking for specifically for all these things. But I also, like, at times, if it's done well, I can value an open-ended world and a world that ends without all the answers. Like I said, like, I really loved how, despite giving us so many answers, Broken Earth Trilogy ended with, like, sort of like an open-ended, like, way of where things could go forward. And I didn't feel the urge for, like, I didn't feel like I needed more for that. And I feel like it's definitely going to be a ending without all the answers. I'm just very interested to know if I'm going to be the sort of if it's going to be the sort of ending where I'll be like happy to theorize about it, or if I'll be like, no, I want Bancroft's answers. Because that's a question for me. But well, I'm taking bets. Edith is going to be the Sphinx now. Because, like, you reminded me of the Byron conversation.
Yeah.
I think it's going to end with Edith as the Sphinx. I don't know about the rest of them.
If Edith survives, yeah. I think that's...
Oh, God, I didn't even think about that. That's a good point. Shit. Yeah, if Edith survives, she'll be the Sphinx.
I think Redelman's doomed. That's...
that makes sense. That makes
sense.
It
makes sense. But, I think, I don't know. I like him, but
I think Adam's doomed. I think Adam's doomed. You gotta be right.
Yeah, I think Adam might be in trouble.
I think either Adam or Valida.
Oh my God, guys, I just realized who Redelman reminds me of. There is that one TikTok of like that toddler that's like running across like this picnic setup, and the mom goes, "What do you have there?" And the toddler screams, "A knife!" And the mom goes, "No!" Redelman's the kid with the knife.
Oh Lord. Okay. On that note, I'm going to do what I've been doing the past few episodes, whatever, and close it out with a quote. And I actually went through and chose a quote for today, so I don't have to go searching for one. Ooh. And it is, Byron hated tea. He hated its bitter taste and the tannic dryness it inspired in the mouth. He hated the smell of it, an aroma like soured wood pulp. And he hated the stains it left in his cups and on his tablecloths. Yet he drank it because he absolutely adored tea time. He loved the little sandwiches and their excessive variety, loved the sugar cubes and their precious tongs. He loved the jewels of jelly and the crowns of toast.
So cute. So precious.
And on that note, thank you for joining us for this episode on parts 1 and 2 of The Fall of Babel. I'm Tara, along with fellow host Jonathan and Ami. We will be back in 2 weeks to talk about the final section of The Fall of Babel, as well as kind of give our review of the series as a whole. And we'll see you then. Have a good night. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.